What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Flip Up Podcast. Today we are joined by special guest Talen, who has marched at Atlanta Quest and is currently teaching audio theater.
Yeah, and as you may have noticed from the last video that went up, we are in some new locations right now. I've moved down to a new apartment, and Jane is back at home, back in Nova. So we're closer together. Maybe you might even see some episodes where we're in the same room. Who knows? But yeah, still getting some things set up. So you may see some new recording backgrounds or whatever. But yeah, without further ado, here's Talon.
Hey everyone, my name is Talen Burkett. I've done not as much as band as I would like to have done, basically because I moved around all my life. To kind of get a backstory, back in sixth grade is when I actually got involved in orchestra, actually. And I did orchestra from sixth to eighth grade, playing the violin, and then I actually moved from Florida to Alabama, and they didn't have orchestra, and they were like, well, we have band. I was like, okay, cool, I don't know anything. They're like, well, he's drumsticks. I'm just like, okay, cool, because my parents couldn't afford actually a horn, and that's how I got involved in drumline. Played bass drum for the first 3 years, seventh, eighth, ninth grade. Then I moved again. Then we were homeschooled, so I didn't do band for 10th grade. Then I moved too late into the season for my junior year, so I didn't do band my junior year, but then my senior year, I was able to do band, and I marched tenors that year. So yeah, that's how I got into just normal band in general. And then marching wise, I did 2 years at Civitas Independent for 2014 and 2015. So I'm a charter member, so that was a really cool experience. And then filled a hole on trumpet at Mandarins in 2015, and then marched my age out with Atlanta Quest in 2016, and been teaching at audio theater ever since for their CYMBAL line.
Well, I gotta say, just to interrupt, I think you might be the first cymbal player that I've talked to that started out in orchestra. Like,
Yeah.
usually it's like, oh, I did band, and my camera cut out. But they're like, oh, I did band, and I wanted to play tenors or something. But then I got put on cymbals.
Yeah. Oh no, for me, I didn't know DCI/WGI existed until I was 20. So I got in very late in the game.
I mean, still getting in that late and being where you're at is that's crazy. It's kind of like the work area, right? Because it's like if you're 50 and you're trying to switch your jobs, it's I feel like I don't
Pretty
know.
much, yeah. Like I'm in the process of doing that in my normal life, so that's fun. But yeah, I honestly got really lucky with just different opportunities and knowing people were in the activity, but not really knowing what it was. It's like I used to be the person like, hey, you should come see this band thing. I was like, okay, cool. So I'd see it. I'm like, all right, that was kind of weird. And then I go home, and then one of my friends is just like, hey, you should come to Palmetto with me. And I was like, I don't know what Palmetto is. He's like, you'll be fine. So he paid for my fees and then took me out to the camp and everything. And I went to the audition. I didn't make it. And I was like, I still don't know why I'm here. And then the staff was like, hey, you should go to Civitas. I'm like, okay, cool. So they sent me to Civitas, get contracted. I literally go through the first show and everything. I was like, I still don't know what this is. Literally nobody has explained what WGI was or anything. I just know I had to show up, learn these weird cymbal things, and then learn music. I was like, that's fine. I'm doing music thing and I'm marching, which is what I enjoy the most. And so here I am now. That was 2014. So yeah, almost 7-8 years later.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's crazy. Also, real quick, I just want to say this. It is pouring out raining. Me and Lucas are like 25 minutes away from each other, so we're both probably gonna have lightning. So if you see our screens just go really bright, or if you hear a giant boom, you guys know we're safe. It's just just a little lightning.
It's just a rave.
Yeah, thunder and the lightning. Hell yeah. I don't know if you're done with telling your resume.
Oh, that's pretty much it. I made it sound like I did a lot more, but I really didn't. I marched independent for 3 years, and then 1 year drum corps, and then I've been teaching a lot longer than I have been marching.
Hell yeah. I mean, that's still a resume, though. I mean, we talk about this all the time, but a lot of people I feel have doubt, and they're like, yeah, no point of getting into it, or I'm too far in, or I know a lot of people who like they graduate high school and they like don't march their first year out of high school and they're like, yeah, I don't think I'm good enough to ever march like their second or third year. But like you got to realize like it's the same with life. Like it's never really too late until like it really is late. And what I mean by that is like you
Physically can't do it.
well physically and like also like there's an age out limit. So like
Yeah.
once you're 23,
Mhm.
but I mean everything's always possible. So, but
Also
yeah,
DCA.
DCA, yeah,
DTA is also a thing. Yep.
cool. I don't know if you want to start off the topics, Lucas.
Yeah, so we actually have a pretty interesting first topic if you want to kind of dive into it, Talen.
Yeah. So yeah, we had been talking about, what we were going to go over for this episode and everything. And I brought up one that was like diversity in the activity in general, because, like a lot of people like to make sure it's like, oh, there's no girl drummers, which is super true. But then at the same time, like you can look in all the other aspects of like different like communities that like aren't involved in it. And it's not really anybody's fault, other than like I would say like availability, and like where it came to my case is like it just wasn't talked about. Like we had people on our staff and everything that like were, they knew what the activities were, but like it wasn't really taught or like told to us students about it, so we never had the chance to pursue it. So I only got involved because I was lucky enough to actually know somebody who was in the activity. And so like that's one of the things that like, me as a teacher, like I try and make sure that like I wear my gear and everything, or like just like start conversations with other people, because like they may just not know, and like they could be missing out on a whole part of like an activity that they just didn't know existed.
Yeah. So I guess like kind of going off of that point, like we had do you remember? Oh, Molly. We had a Molly Gormley. We marched with her at George Mason. We talked a lot about like what it was like being a female in the activity. I'm just kind of curious though, like being black in the community, has it affected you at all? Like in terms of like opportunity, or like have you know like going off of what we've been talking about with like diversity, has it ever affected you in any ensemble?
Me personally, I don't think so. Just for the sole fact, it's like, well, personally, I'm like a super like driven person anyway. So it's just like once I found out that WGI and DCI was a thing, and I got it, I was like, okay, cool. I have 2021, 22 to do WGI, and then like 2021 to do like DCI. So like I just put in the work to do these things. But it was kind of a weird thing, because like there are certain times where it's like I'd be like I'm in the group, I earned my contract and everything, but then like I felt like I kind of didn't fit in at certain points. But it was mostly just because like, hey, it's like I'm not the only person, but it's just like everyone around me like really isn't. And I was super fortunate for 2016 Atlanta Quest, like we literally made a joke about it. It's like this is the most diverse cymbal line. Like everybody on the cymbal line was a different ethnicity, and like I think it was 2 girls and 4 guys. So like it was just an all around like really good time. Like, and the whole vibe that we all had was really fun. But even like seeing other ensembles since I've like aged out and everything, like you can still kind of see it, and you're just like you just kind of wish that you saw more of it, and it's not there. But it's like it's no one's actual fault other than the fact that like a lot of people just like, it goes back to like band is super niche in general. So unless you're going around telling everybody else about band, and they're telling everybody else about band, it's not going to get any bigger.
I mean, kind
Yeah.
of going off of this, I mean, we never really talked about this on the podcast, but like we've been pretty fortunate. Like we've, especially at George Mason, we've been marching like very diverse ensembles. Like I'd say there's just so much diversity. Like, if we're talking about like our techs, like both our techs are females. Like half the cymbal line is females, um, and what would you say, Lucas? Like most of our snares are black, if I can remember. I'd say
Yeah.
a good amount, and even staff. So I mean, I feel like we've never really experienced it, so it's like something that like we don't really know how to talk about, which is why we get other people who may have or have not been in like diverse ensembles. So
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things that people always talk about with diversity is the bringing together different backgrounds. So I'm kind of interested, like with cymbals especially, it's such a creative thing there's a lot of input that comes from the members. Would you say that the diversity has kind of helped with that?
I would say so. Like for the cymbal community in general, I feel like I've experienced like the least. I won't even call it backlash because I've never had any like personal like attacks or anything about it. But it's just like in cymbal communities, like they're super chill about everything because like we already know like on the band totem poles, like the cymbals are down here because like we understand what we're doing, but nobody else really understands what we're doing. And so like it doesn't matter where you are. It's like if you do cymbals, it's like all right, great, like you do cymbals, like we're good. But then you kind of like look at other aspects. So like this is an off-topic thing. So it's just like I'm openly gay. I'm out and everything, married. Been married for the last 3 years. Jesus. But like even like thanks. But like coming out to people and they'd be like, oh, like you play drums. It's like back in high school, like you play drums and you're gay. I'm like, those aren't mutually exclusive. It's just like people can do these things. And so like it took me a while like seeing that like a lot of people just like didn't attribute the two things together. It's like people like actually see like drumline as this like hyper masculine thing, which goes back to the whole thing. It's like, oh, there's no girls in the drumline and everything. But like it's been put on this like pedestal, which is like, oh, like only, you know, the guys, like only the boys do drumline. I was like, no, that's not how any of this works. It's like it literally has nothing to do with gender or anything. It's like people just like doing it.
Yeah, and exactly what you were saying. It's a great point. Like cymbal playing, if you put it in this whole like, I guess, like if we're gonna like put like stereotype of things, I guess you say like, you know, everyone's like, oh, you're a snare drummer, like, you know, we associate you with like drumline and stuff like that. But then it's like, if you're a cymbal player, it's almost like you're at like it's like people put you at like the bottom of things, you know. So I feel like diversity, like it never is like an issue, especially as like a cymbal player. I feel like because it's like, where are you at the low of like the food chain of like percussion instruments, you know? So it's like, you know, we want to be just as well known as like snare drummers. And like, I feel like, especially cymbal playing, we really push to be like the best of the best. Like the way this instrument has innovated compared to, I feel like other instruments, like, yes, I don't play snare or quads, so I can't truly say this, but like from what I feel and just what at least I notice as a cymbal player, I feel like our instrument is just growing and honestly should be more popular than some of these other instruments, you know. But I just feel like because they've been so well known for a while, it's just the way life has been, you know. I just feel like we don't get the same respect, you know, even though we've worked our asses off as cymbal players to really innovate this instrument, you know.
Yeah,
like,
honestly,
even from where I've started.
Oh, you can go. Keep going.
Oh, sorry about that. Like even from where I've just started back in 2014, where I had no idea like how to hold cymbals, like seeing like how the activity has changed, like from there, like because my first lot, like I watched Atlanta Quest and I saw MCM, like even looking back to just those two cymbal lines and like comparing it to what we have now, I was just like, no, like those lines would look at what we're doing now and be like, I would never have thought of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so also another thing, like we try not to repeat things that we talk about on the podcast, but it's hard not to repeat things when you have new people. And like hopefully you guys see this, like we all see the same exact things, and that's why things tend to sometimes repeat. But
we're reinforcing these ideas.
Exactly. Like these points, like, you know, like if it's being said multiple times, then like, you know, this is where you should take notes, you know? Those are those areas. But I completely forgot what you said because I was going to reedify it.
Well, I was just going to go off of like going back to the whole diversity thing and being on a line. I just thought of this. Like, I think one of the best parts of doing DCI, WGI, or just being on a cymbal line is that no matter where you come from or whatever, like whoever the person next to you is, no matter what, you're kind of forced to just get along and you just forget everything else because you're all just put together with this one goal. It's like, okay, we got to be the best of the best. Doesn't matter who you're marching with, if you hate them or love them, you're just like, we're put together like to do this thing, so we're going to do it. And then by the end, you're best friends.
Yeah, and we mentioned this before, like obviously sometimes you're gonna be on a line and like especially I feel like with DCI, like you're gonna have your moments where like, you know, like you know, someone's being
It's not a
bitchy
good
that one
day. They
day.
say the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Yeah, so I mean, like, you know, like people have their days, but then at the end, you like end the season, you're like, it doesn't matter, you know, because I think it's like the rewards and the friendships you make along the ways, and it's like honestly, suffering with each other and like, you know, overcoming like these like situations, you know, is really the real reward of this activity, not finals placements.
Yeah,
So
everyone
No.
struggles the same. And then seeing that, it kind of, you realize that you're all like, no matter what the differences are, you're all the same pretty much.
Mhm. I'm glad you mentioned the whole finals placements thing because I was also went to one of these schools where it's just like they were very big about like placements, numbers, and whatnot, and like so when I say I didn't know what drum corps was, like they showed us a video. I was like, oh, this is band, and then once I actually got involved and I was trying to audition, like I would ask for like help and everything, and they would like, oh, like well, if you're not really like top 12, then is it really drum corps? And so like I was kind of like, okay, that makes sense. Like me not knowing, anything about the activity. And
Oh,
then I ended up marching at Mandarins because, I didn't make, because I was still doing drum lines. So I was trying to audition for like Phantom Regiment is where I was going for. So after I got cut, my tech at Civitas was tech at Mandarins. And he was like, hey, I know you got cut and I know you want to march. He goes, if I put you on a horn, would you march? I was like, absolutely. And that's how I got out there. I'd never touched trumpet before. I was like, no, like, but they gave me the opportunity to go out and march my age out. And so like I got to do the thing, it was the first time we had a full corps and everything. And I couldn't even tell you what placement we made that year, but it did not care. Like I had a blast that entire season. Like it genuinely didn't matter like where we placed. I was like, no, we made it all the way through tour and we are here at finals and we did the thing.
I think this activity does a bad job of emphasizing how truly rewarding it is to go through the whole 3 month experience because I feel like at not I was gonna say like at the end of the day because that usually is like that the but like what I'm talking about is like when you have your last run it's like I feel like they're like all right well like we're going to emphasize the top 12 and it's just like all right well you other semifinalists and prelims cores like that didn't make any farther like it's like all right bye like it's like well what did we work for in the end I feel like it's just like all
Yep.
right you worked your ass off to get there and it's like all right well we're going to depreciate it now
Yeah.
so and
yeah.
I know sometimes on social media they'll post things on like oh watch this Colts video but then it's like you see people in the comments and they're like I mean they like hype it up but it's like nothing compared to what you see with like Carolina Crown and it's quite honestly because of the stereotype with making finals and it's just like
Yep.
I don't know it's like
Also
it's
just the knowledge of like everything else in general, like I guess like with teaching and everything, it's just like the kids will pretty much only react to either like what they're also seeing online or what they're also being taught by like their peers and everything. So like it's the culture itself. I will say I think it is getting better because there are a lot more like competent people like our age or whatnot getting involved and like being more active on social media to where we can actually say something rather than some random kid being like, oh, like Carolina Crown is, the absolute best drum corps. No other one comes to compare. And you're just like, there's like 30 other groups like doing the same stuff. It's like we're all doing the same things.
yeah and I thought about this but like that's the issue with like cymbal players also is like I feel like maybe the whole thing with like we're seen as like the lower chain of things is because not many cores have a cymbal line and like that's why everyone hypes up Vanguard but it's like guys if you look at these other lines like holy shit they're so good it's not just Vanguard
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like
Yep.
that's why everyone's like oh West Coast is the best coast because it's like they just only compare it to Vanguard and it's like well guys have you seen East Coast approach or have you guys seen like what goes on in like WG I feel like only people talk about Vanguard and
Yeah,
then like
you don't need to be top 12 to have a good cymbal line. I think that's one of the biggest things. I mean, mostly in DCI, but like we were out there dressed in all pink, scoring the worst like Mass and Scouts show of all time. Like we made
second
history.
worst.
Or second worst. We made history for having the worst show, but we still had like a good line. But I
Yeah.
Yeah,
mean, that's the
absolutely.
thing.
And like especially with like the West Coast groups like OC and Academy not having their symbol lines anymore, and people still like, oh, Vanguard is like, all pretty much all the East Coast groups still have their symbol lines. Like, why aren't people, talking about them at all?
Mhm. Moving on to our next point.
I was literally gonna change the topic, but then I literally saw you and I was like, who's gonna say it
Like,
first?
ooh. Yeah, but you mentioned teaching earlier, and kind of segueing back to that. Are there any like special things you noticed while teaching? Since you did say that you taught more than you marched, what are some of like the biggest things that you'd like to say as a tech?
Um, that's a loaded question. I've genuinely grown to love teaching and everything because well, I wasn't trying to teach in general in the very beginning, and like once I aged out, like I moved away and I ended up in Tennessee. I was like, I didn't know of any groups out there other than MCM. I was like, you know what? I'm done with band. That's fine. And I actually was found by one of the members of Audio Theater's visual line. They came through the Starbucks that I was working at and they saw me wear my AQ jacket because I'm cold. And so I just wore my jacket literally every day at the drive through. And they're like, hey, so we know what band is too. And they explained what audio theater was. I was like, okay, cool. I've never heard of it. And what'd you do? Is I did cymbals. And they went back to their director and then they told them, and they were like, call him.
That
And
is
so it finds out
amazing.
that like yeah, so it finds out that there were guys that aged out with me. Well, not aged out, but like I marched with at AQ that were teaching audio theater that I just didn't know existed. They're like, hey, we know him. And so like literally like 2 hours later, I get a phone call. They're like, hey, do you want to come teach cymbals? I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And that's how I got involved with teaching with like audio theater. So there's my story. But yeah, teaching was never something that I like went out of my way to do, but like once I got involved in it and because of the situation that I was put in, I feel like that made me want to do better because I joined in if not the first week of March, then the last week of February. So that was my experience with the 2017 line. And they looked at me, they're like, we're going to be honest, they have not had a cymbal check all year. I was like, oh, here we go. But like, luckily the four kids that were there, they were so great. Like they knew they didn't have a cymbal check, but like they still put in the work to actually like try and develop some sort of technique and try and put in visuals and whatnot because it's like, that's their line. Like they have to do what they have to do because they want to stand out just like everybody else. And because I was fortunate enough to have those four kids that were already trying, like willing to put in the work, like me just throwing in ideas. I'm like, hey, I did this before. Like this could be cool. Like I've seen this before. This could be cool. And then so like we just kept building up on that. And then towards the end of the season, like it was very rewarding. So like at the end of that season, I was like, I genuinely enjoy teaching, which is how I ended back up there for 18, 19, 20, and most of 20 would have been 21 and now for the year 2022. And you can ask any of my kids every single year at the end. I was like, I'm not teaching next year. Back again.
Keep getting sucked in. I feel like you were meant for
Yes.
this activity. The way you're telling like your background story, the way you got into band in the first place, the way you got into drumline, and then how you kind of just left that and got sucked into teaching. It was like you were meant for this.
Yeah. So like, band is going to keep following me wherever I go because like there's a ensemble out here on the East Coast that I'm trying to work with as well. And they found out, they're like, hey, so we found out you moved to New York. I was like, who's telling you guys these things? It's like,
Spies everywhere.
Yeah.
yeah, I told everybody, I was like, hey, I'm done with band now because, law school is going to be a lot. And so we're like, hey, so we heard you're not doing band. That's a lie. I'm like, okay.
Oh yeah. So here's two things. First thing is like the one thing I gotta admire about you. Uh, I didn't know who you were. Actually, I found out who you were in 2019 because I can't remember what popped up. It was something about audio theater, and it was your
Not at
your
museum.
profile. Yeah, it was like the T Rex, right?
Oh, that show
Yep.
was awesome.
Yeah, but
That's
I remember like you came up or something in my feed, and I'm like, wow, you do a really good job, like mediating the kids. I guess is the best way to put it, like putting their media out there and like really like getting the awareness. Because quite honestly, I didn't even know like, well, when did audio theater start?
that is a good question. It's either true. Hey, please don't hate me, Tex, if you're like my directors. Um, I think it's either 2009, 2010, something like that. So yeah, but my knowledge of it starts in like I knew they were around in like 2014 ish.
Well, okay, so that's my point though. I didn't even know audio theater was a ensemble until I started seeing their symbol line stuff and like the
Hmm.
way you were mediating them, like because I feel like they went from like who's audio theory to now it's like, yo, they got like a symbol line and they're out there and they're gonna push the game, you know. So that's why gotta give you props for it. It's almost like a um I don't know what to compare it to, but like you know, I guess for like George Mason, it's like you know George Mason's there, but it's like had like a history of like constantly pushing out the symbol game. Now we're at a point where it's like, yeah, I know George Mason's symbol line, like Mean Sims. I like kind of like that, you know, like we're like the generation that's sort of like mediating the symbol lines, I guess, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But
No, totally.
so
Yeah,
so
like
that
with
go ahead.
I was basically like it wasn't just me. It was like a combination of like me and my students because like going back to the original question that you even asked me about teaching, like I think my teaching style is more like I already knew that like I didn't have that much symbol experience, and so whenever I had kids in my line, like I was never going to be like, oh, I know what's best for you in general, especially like the way that the symbol line like community itself just evolves. Like I never went in thinking that like, okay, cool, I know everything. It's my job to make sure the kids know all these things, and then my word is law. I went in, I was like, okay, cool. Like this is like our line. Like this is a group community thing. So like, it was always open discussion. I was like, hey, like we're gonna do this, and we're gonna try and do this. But at the same time, like I always made sure that I was like, I wasn't just teaching the kids. I was also teaching myself as well, and trying to figure out like what works best. So like, I feel like the lines do a lot better whenever they feel like they are contributing as well. So like I always had like sort of like open floor stuff. I'm like, hey, I'd be like, we have 20 counts to add in whatever we want to add, and I'd be like, let's see like some sort of ideas, and we just like bounce off of each other. And then I felt like my job as a tech was to basically tell the kids no or yes, and like when it is a no, explain the reason why. So like for instance, if you had a tap trick on beat one and they had for an 18 count phrase and they had a visual up until count 16, I was like, hey, why don't we try and shorten the visual so we have more time to prep for the tap trick that's on beat one, because we don't want to lose the sound quality and everything. And so I make it so it's like as I'm like trying to teach them, I'm making sure that like I'm relaying information for them to be able to teach anybody else these same basic things.
Wow. Everything about that was incredible. Like just the idea of also learning while teaching them, like never treating it like you know everything and that you just have to teach them everything. Like I think that's an amazing mentality to have as a teacher. I already know that Brian Kendrick's going to watch this episode and he's going to be like, oh, he's going to start flipping out and then he's going to like screenshot it and then repost it or whatever. But like, yeah, that idea, I feel like it should be out there more, because while these techs do know a lot, most of the time they don't really know 100% of what the students are doing, because it just keeps evolving that fast. So they kind of have to step back a little bit. They kind of have to like figure things out, like, okay, they're doing this, but I never did that when I marched. So I kind of have to learn what they're doing first and then guide it. So it's like more collaborative than just, okay, do this. You need to do this. You're doing this wrong. It's like, it's a learning thing.
I have to
Yeah,
call out so
absolutely.
many. I have to call out so many ensembles, but like I think the biggest issue right now is I feel like a lot of lines are having issues like distinguishing between tradition and also like going with the new innovations of symbol playing, because I feel like I don't want to say like an ensemble, but like you know what I'm saying, like I guess like a tradition. So like I'll use Music City because we all know they do tilted vert, right? Like that's a tradition there. But like like I guess you could argue like leather straps. It's completely out of the loop. Like yes, it's tradition to use it, but like if you're getting a new generation of cymbal players that want to use like nylon to like be the best they can be, like I feel like as a tech you should be able to sort of understand that, and like that sort of tradition, like it's like outdated. Not saying leather's bad. I mean, we had to me and Lucas had to use leather for like part of scouts, and quite honestly leather's a great way to really build like your flips and stuff.
Yeah, when you're starting out, when you're learning, like leather is amazing. And I know the MCM people are gonna watch this and they're gonna freak out. They're like, "Oh, leather's the best. Nylon's too slippery." I mean,
Yeah, you just got
if I were on a line and they said use leather, I'll use leather. But yeah,
also fun
That's
fact
the other thing about symbols. I would just the other fun thing about like symbols is like you just have to adapt. It's like whatever line that you're in, like if you want to be in that group, like you can't just walk up to the tech and be like, I don't want to do this. I'm like, okay, well then I guess you're not on the line. Like you either have to make like the decision to actually just like go ahead with it or find somewhere else. And so like, I get what you're saying with the whole tradition, everything. It's one of those weird fine lines. And I feel like at the end of the day, it just comes up like to the members, like, what do you want to be a part of? Because there aren't that many ensembles that you're going to be able to go into and just change everything.
Exactly. And we were fortunate enough, Lucas and I at George Mason, like we were able to build the tradition, because I feel like George Mason's kind of been like, yeah, we'll do this and that, and there's always like small traditions, but in terms of like the approach of the instrument, I feel like now George Mason is known for like spending lots of hours, working on out flips. Yo, guys, sorry, there is a cut. Lucas was making a point. We don't remember what it was. We just had this like 10-minute thing issue. I don't even want to explain it. Honestly, Lucas, like this is our moment. We're probably just gonna have to start a Patreon now. Put this
You want to
footage
see
on
that?
there.
If you want to see whatever just happened, go check out the Patreon. It's pretty interesting.
Are we gonna start a Patreon right now? Just to put that on.
On the episode.
Yeah.
Start screen sharing and just logging in.
I mean, I'll save the footage, but guys, we're definitely thinking about starting a Patreon, so be on the lookout. It might even be around now, but yeah, we've been talking about honestly starting one. Like we've been saying like new things are coming in the works, but I guess that's one of the things is that we've been talking about starting a Patreon, putting all these uncut podcast stuff because we do cuts and stuff. They're honestly really funny. I might just do a compilation of it, but anyways, back to the point. Unfortunately, we're at the end of the episode, even though Lucas didn't get to share his last point. But of course, you guys don't know. I'm sorry, guys. It's been a long day, but of course, you guys know the episode's not over. We gotta ask Talen the big question. Lucas, if you'd like to do it.
Yeah, as always, as we do with every guest, Talen, if there's one thing you want to say to the CYMBAL community, what would it be?
Have fun. There's so many people that are out there doing band, like as we said earlier, like for the placements or for the name and everything. I was just like, if you're not having fun at the end of the day, like why are you doing this? Like you're not inspiring anybody else doing it. Like you're not really getting what the real meaning of like doing band is. So just get out there and have fun. Like it doesn't matter where you are, just do what you like doing.
That was perfect. We're still on track, guys. No one has repeated yet. I don't think anyone said have fun.
That's a big one. Have fun.
Yeah, honestly. Honestly, I'm waiting for someone to say good luck, have fun. Once someone says that, oh boy, be pushing the waters, but
Getting close to repeating.
Yeah. Sorry guys, we're getting loopy. It was just crazy what just happened. But thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. Thank you again, Talen, for being on the episode, and we'll see you guys in the next episode of the Flip Up Podcast. Oh god, dude, that was